So I just helped 4 job seekers get hired inside 2 weeks after months of struggling. Now they weren't struggling because they weren't trying. They were networking, reaching out, applying, doing all the right things. But they were still wondering, how can I be following all of your advice and still not seeing any results? In fact, every single one of them said to me the same thing. Lucy, I'm already following all your advice, so I'm not sure where I could be going wrong. And I know a lot of you are probably feeling the same. So in this video, I'm going to share exactly what I learned to help you assess what you're doing and finally get you back on track. But before we get into their stories, I need to say this. Job searching is highly psychological and the margin for error is so small. It's a lot like following a GPS. If you're following directions, but you're just 1 degree off, at first it doesn't seem like a big deal. You're still moving forward, you're still on a path, and it feels like you're making progress. But all of a sudden, you're miles off course. And that's exactly what happens in job searching. You can be networking, applying, and optimizing your LinkedIn, but if just one element is slightly off, you'll keep missing the mark. Now, maybe you're reaching out, but to the wrong people, or maybe your resume is great, but your LinkedIn contradicts it, or maybe hiring managers see your message, but it's written in a way that gets dismissed. Now, when you don't get feedback, you don't realize you're off course until it's too late. And that is why feedback is everything. Now, if you were driving and your GPS suddenly stopped recalculating when you took a wrong turn, you'd have no idea you were lost until you were miles away from where you were meant to be. And that's what happens to job seekers every single day. Recruiters ghost them, hiring managers don't explain their decisions, rejection emails are vague, and without feedback, you can keep making the same mistakes without realizing it. And that's exactly what happened to these 4 clients. They weren't failing because they weren't doing the right things, they just weren't doing the right things the right way. And that's why, with my help as a former recruiter and hiring manager, I was able to quickly pinpoint what was holding them back and show them they were just one small shift away from success. So let's dive in and look at my clients who were all doing the right things but the wrong way. So first up was my client James. Now James was avoiding the ATS and Easy Apply and instead sending dozens of outreach messages, but nothing was happening. No responses, no interviews. Now the problem? He was only messaging recruiters. Now, don't get me wrong, a good recruiter in your sector can be a massive help, but their main focus is filling open positions for their clients. And if you don't fit their current search, they move on. Now the fix, we switched his focus to hiring managers, decision makers, and the people who actually had the power to hire. And within a week, he had 3 interviews lined up. So lesson number 1, if you're reaching out but nothing is happening, first check who you're talking to. Now next was Hannah, who was reaching out, which was great, but every time she did, she got the same response. Thanks for reaching out, the team will have your application and you'll hear from us shortly. The problem was she never did, and it was because of her messaging. She was essentially saying, hi, I recently applied to your open role and thought I'd drop you a message because I'm really interested in the role and I'd love to be considered. Now this gave the hiring managers no reason to engage. She was just another applicant in their inbox. And by telling them that she'd already applied, they were just fobbing her off to the talent acquisition team. So what was the fix? Well, first I told her to stop saying she'd already applied online. It clearly wasn't working. And we rewrote her message to focus on the hiring manager's problems, not her application. So she started sending short messages focused on the typical challenges common in her industry, followed by a quick overview of what she had done to solve such problems before asking whether the hiring manager would be open to talking further. And the result was that she started getting into real conversations that led to interviews. And the lesson here is that if hiring managers keep ignoring you, passing you off, or suggesting you apply via their website, it's not because this strategy doesn't work. It's just that your messaging probably sucks. So next up was Ahmed. Now Ahmed was everything you'd want in a strong candidate. He had 10 plus years of experience, industry knowledge, and leadership skills. But despite all of that, he kept getting rejected before even landing interviews. Lucy, I don't get it. I have the experience, I've done everything. Why am I not getting any callbacks? Now the problem here was his resume was full of fluff and buzzwords. Ahmed's issue wasn't a lack of experience, it was that his resume was packed with meaningless corporate jargon and didn't actually say anything. He had the right skills and he had done the work, but his resume sounded like it was written by some sort of weird jargon generator, or in his case, ChatGPT. So for example, instead of clearly stating his impact, his resume was full of vague phrases like demonstrated strategic financial acumen to drive business objectives, leverage cross-functional synergies to optimize fiscal outcomes, proactively engage stakeholders to facilitate financial excellence. Sounds impressive, right? Well, it meant nothing. And when I asked him what it meant and what it covered in the job description, he stared at me with a blank face. And that's probably how recruiters and hiring managers reviewing his application looked. They probably couldn't actually tell what he had done. When we compared his resume to the job description he was applying, it was clear his experience was getting lost in a sea of buzzwords. It was saying things like executed dynamic financial methodologies to enhance operational efficiencies. No one speaks like that in real life, and hiring managers don't have time to decode what you mean. If they can't instantly see how your experience aligns, they move on. So in Ahmed's case, all we did was remove the fluff and made his resume clear, results-driven, and aligned with the employer language. We studied the job descriptions to find the exact phrasing hiring managers were looking for and made sure his resume reflected it with quantifiable metrics, so it wasn't just what he did, it was the results that followed. So instead of leverage cross-functional synergies to optimize fiscal outcomes, we changed it to led financial forecasting strategies that reduced operational costs by 20% and improved budget accuracy. Now, instead of sounding vague and inflated, he sounded clear, competent, and he was exactly what the hiring managers were looking for. And that sums up lesson number 3. If your resume is full of buzzwords but doesn't clearly show what you've achieved, hiring managers will pass. So strip out the fluff, be clear, and use the employer's language. And finally, there was Emily. Now, if you'd asked Emily about her job search struggles, she would have told you, I don't know what's wrong, I'm great at interviews, but there's so much competition and I'm just not getting the offer I used to. And I hear this all the time. People tell me they're amazing in interviews, but when I actually ask them about how they approach key parts of the conversation, especially when it comes to getting clarity on hiring process, I wouldn't necessarily agree. And that was exactly the case with Emily. She thought she was great at interviews until we dug deeper. Now, Emily was doing well in her interviews. She was likable, answering questions confidently, talking through her experience and getting good feedback. But she wasn't securing offers. So I asked her, at the end of your interviews, what questions are you asking? And her response was the usual. What do you love about working here? What's the team culture like? What are the next steps? Now, these are all fine questions, but none of them did anything to move the process forward or get real clarity on how she should be navigating things. And this is where so many candidates go wrong. They assume interviews are just about answering questions well, when in reality, they're also about getting commitment from the hiring manager. So I asked her, did you confirm a clear timeline for the decision-making process? Did you ask whether they were considering any internal candidates? Did you ask what happens if you don't hear back from them within that time frame? Did you discuss what might slow down their decision? And she didn't know. And then she said, I didn't want to seem too pushy. But if you're not asking these questions professionally, do you think that raises your status or lowers your status? You see, you've got to be positioning yourself as someone who is sharp as a tack, enthusiastic as hell, and a force to be reckoned with. Not necessarily because employers are intentionally trying to ghost you, but because they don't want to raise their real reservations in that moment. So instead of being upfront about any doubts, they just delay giving you a decision. They don't want to be confrontational by saying that they just aren't that interested. So they say something vague like, we'll be in touch soon, knowing full well that they probably won't be. And in some cases, they genuinely believe they'll get back to you, but that can soon change if someone better comes along. Life and work take over and priorities shift. So in Emily's case, we worked on an interview technique to lock in a clear timeline, preempt delays and get commitment instead of getting ghosted. So instead of waiting and hoping, she now knew exactly when to follow up and what to expect. And within 2 weeks, she had a job offer, which wraps up lesson number 4. Being great at interviews isn't just about answering questions well. It's about driving the conversation, securing commitment, and making sure you aren't left waiting in limbo. So if you've been wondering why you're doing all the right things but still stuck, take a step back. Just like my 4 clients, you might not be failing because you're doing the wrong things, but because one small detail is off. And if you don't want to keep guessing and you want help getting this right, drop the word hired in the comments and I'll send you a short video overview of my Career Growth Accelerator program, where I'll work with you one-to-one to get you on track. But first, now go make those small shifts and let me know when you land that next job.